for inviting me, and thank you to all the American Friends of Blérancourt for the first ever Anne Morgan Women of Courage Award. When I received your invitation, my first thought was, wow, what an honor. And then the second thought was, really? I mean, when you set out to honor a woman of courage, you had options. Madeleine Albright comes to mind. But in all seriousness, we're very, very lucky to live in a world where we're surrounded by women of courage every day. They're leading their countries through tremendous challenges. They're saving lives around the world. They're standing up for every woman's right to health care and every girl's right to education. And you know many of these stories. And then there are the women, millions and millions of them, whose stories we may never know. There are mothers who face overwhelming danger to build a better future for their children. There are girls who risk their lives just to go to school. Working women everywhere who break through the glass ceilings, large and small. The quiet, humble courage that sustains them each day is an inspiration to all of us. Think about how much better the world would be if we knew these women's names. If we knew their stories. And there's something that Anne Morgan understood well. As you know, she spent her extraordinary life on the front lines, a union organizer in 1910, as a volunteer ambulance driver during World War I, a philanthropist who stayed and helped France rebuild long after others had left. But Anne Morgan also believed in the power of telling stories. And as one of the first women documentarians, she knew that if you want to solve a problem, you have to shine a spotlight on it. And sometimes point a camera at it. And you can't just tell us about the world that you hope to see. You have to show us in the way that only a work of passion and creativity can. As I thought about these two ideas, the courage of countless women around the world and the power of our stories to make the world a better place, I kept going back to one person, my mom. And tonight, instead of talking about my own life and career, I wanted to focus on her story instead. Most people know my mom by her nickname, Dorothea, similar to yours, Dorothea. And she knew everyone by whatever name popped into her head at the moment. I remember once she said to me, and she was Greek heritage, so she said, "They say she's pregnant." And I said, "Who, Mom? Who's pregnant?" And she said, "You know, the one who married to the one who used to date Wayne Petrol." And I said, "Wayne Petrol?" And it turns out she was talking about Jennifer Aniston. And Wayne Petrol was Gwyneth Paltrow. I mean, my mom was good at a lot of things, like picking out a hit song on the radio, but she was so bad with names. And looking at her sitting in her beautiful little home in Southern California, trying and failing to keep up with the pop culture and celebrity gossip, you'd never think that my mother once made a kind of daring, death-defying escape that you think only happens in movies. But that's exactly what she did. My mom taught me what courage means. She was born in 1921 in Auburn, New York, a first-generation American. Her parents were originally from a small town called Sotira, Greek, but a village that was in Albania, nestled in the mountains that formed the border with Greece. And Sotira actually means savior in Greek. When she was 4 years old, she went with her brothers and sisters and her parents to visit her village. And while she was there, her father died. We still don't know if it was an accident. He was an anti-communist, he was an anti-fascist, and an activist. And one story is that he was killed for his beliefs. We never knew. Either way, the relatives in New York didn't want to have to support a widow and 3 children. So they told my mother and her sisters and brothers and my grandmother to stay in Dorothea. Her siblings eventually moved to Athens, but that little village is where my mom spent the next 15 years. Until one day, near the end of the Second World War, Italian and German troops occupied the town. They weren't allowing anyone in, they weren't allowing anyone out. Guards were posted in the mountains with orders to shoot anyone who was caught trying to escape. But they had to escape. My grandmother went first, leaving my mother behind so as not to arouse suspicion. And then one night, my mother took nothing but the clothes on her back and a set of silverware handed down through her family for generations, and fled into the mountains toward Greece. Imagine what she must have felt in that moment. To be 19 years old, leaving the only home you've ever known. Imagine going up into those dark, cold mountains on foot, walking past the fields that you played in, the rivers where you used to wash your laundry, the places you knew so well were now so full of danger. Imagine your heart pounding with every cough, every shadow in the moonlight, every snap of a twig. How could she have possibly found the will to do something like that? And yet she did it. All night she climbed through the mountains, dodging guards, finding her way, pulling forward. And finally, the next day she reached Greece. She was alive and she was well. Eventually, they made it back to the United States, where my mom and dad met my dad, started a family, moved to California, and clearly never learned who Gwyneth Paltrow was. But that one act of bravery, leaving everything behind at just 19 years old, defined her. That act of courage shaped the rest of her entire long and very fulfilling life. I am so lucky to have a mom that had a story like that. There were so many lessons that she learned in that one night, lessons that she passed down to me. And for her, the most important lesson was that she had done enough hiking for a lifetime. Seriously, I think that might have been the last time she ever exercised voluntarily. But there were other more important lessons. And I often used to ask my mom how she found the strength to leave everything behind, knowing that her life was in danger. And she always told me the same thing. She had no choice. That's the first thing my mom taught me about courage. So we often talk about finding our courage as if it's something that we have to go looking for. But for my mother, and for millions of women like her, courage was something that was already there. They had this hidden fire of bravery burning inside them, ready for the moment that they needed it. A courage that arises when you have no choice. I think that's so inspiring, because if courage is something that we already have within us, then maybe we can find a way to harness it, to light that spark, even when the stakes are life or death. Not everyone is brave, but everyone has the capacity to be brave. And doesn't that make you hopeful about the world? My mom also taught me that being brave doesn't mean being fearless. For decades, she used to have nightmares about her village. Even though by then she had lived in Hollywood, California for almost her entire adult life, she would awake sometimes in a panic, sure that she was stuck in Dorothea and that this time there was no way out. More than 40 years after her escape, when my siblings and I brought her back to the village for the first time, it took a lot of convincing, persuading her that everything would be okay. So often, women are labeled as either courageous or scared, one or the other. But that is a false choice. My mom was incredibly courageous, and you know what? She was also scared. She was both, and I am so glad that she was both. She showed me that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is what you do despite the presence of fear. So finally, My mom taught me that courage is not a finite resource. In fact, it's the opposite. Through history, acts of courage have led to more acts of courage. And that was true in my mother's life. That night, as a teenager fleeing through the mountains on foot, is what I think led her to empathize with anyone who was persecuted. My mother understood from her own life and her own story that we're all in this together. All her experience gave her the fortitude to stand up for what she believed in. And I also know that her courage has been handed down over generations, because her experience is something I've come back to time and time again in my own life. Like movies that we've produced, My Big Fat Greek Wedding or Mamma Mia, movies starring women. Even though we were told audiences would never buy tickets, or when you decide to start a new career as a singer-songwriter at the young age of, never mind, they don't need to know that. Or when I've set out to tell important stories of support or support important causes, even though they're controversial. All those things have been made much easier because I had my mom's story to give me strength. And while I think that you should have maybe invited Madeline Albright, I hope that my own story can give new generations of women just a little bit more strength as they make brave decisions of their own. It doesn't have to be climbing a mountain in the dead of night. It can be the courage to try something new, to express yourself in a different way, to demand a seat at the table even when you're not sure you're ready. It can be the courage to stand up to a bully instead of being a bystander, or to try to make things a little bit better when you don't know if you'll succeed, to help others even when the world seems to not care. And that's the kind of courage women have always carried with them. And it's the kind of courage we need now more than ever. Earlier I mentioned that my mom fled her home with just two things: the clothes on her back and her silverware. I don't know what happened to those clothes.
Silverware?
I have the silverware. She gave it to me a few years before she died, and she wanted me to have it, and she said, because she knew I could take care of it. She knew I could take care of it. A woman's life story is like that precious set of silverware. We inherit it. We pass it on to the next generation. It has to be polished. It has to be appreciated. You have to take care of it. In creating this award, you've taken good care of Anne Morgan's story. You're using her lifetime of courage to inspire today's women to make bold, meaningful choices in their own lives. And in her memory, in the hope that we can inspire others the way past generations of women have inspired us, I humbly accept this honor tonight.